What's going through your head during the walkout?
It's almost like a possession. That's really the moment I think that a fighter was born in me. I had to make a choice in that moment. It was just like being in the eye of the tornado. If I wanted to become a world champion, I had to be okay with getting knocked out. But at that point, I was absolutely ready to literally die. Every fight before that, I had prepared according to a male model.
Interesting.
80% of all autoimmune diseases exist in women. And I think that we're working against our biology and really hurting ourselves. Certain fighters need to get hit before what they call wake up.
Yeah.
Sometimes people just got to get hit in the face, metaphorically. I mean, that's life though. It will, hand you your ass sometimes. I remember learning how to choke someone on my first day and I was absolutely sold.
That's all it takes.
It's all it takes.
You just need to learn to choke someone out. Welcome to 2%. I'm your host, Michael Easter. This weekend is UFC Freedom 250, the biggest fight in UFC history. It is happening on the White House lawn, of all places. Now, I live in Las Vegas, and the official sport of Las Vegas is UFC. This town is crawling with fighters. We have some of the best fighters in the world all living in Las Vegas. So this week on 2%, it is all about fighting and the life lessons that you can gain from it. So I called up one of those fighters who happens to live in Las Vegas, one of the all-time greats, Miesha Tate. She's a former champion. She came and hung out with me in the studio. We talked about her rise in the UFC, what she learned walking on the all-boys wrestling team, which is how she got her start in fighting. She told me about life lessons she got by being punched in the face. Turns out there are some really wonderful things you can learn about presence, focus, and performance from that. And then she also talked about how when she started working with her biology as a woman, how that totally changed how she was able to perform. Because the problem with the UFC, how they approached women for most of time, is that they assumed that they were just smaller men. But it turns out if you, as a woman, start to think of that biology, you can do a lot more in life. So this is a great conversation. Miesha has some of the most insane stories I've ever heard, but they're delivered with such a calm and a presence that I think really acts as a metaphor how putting yourself into hard positions where you have to figure things out, that can teach you a lot about life. So with all that said, let's bring Miesha on right now. First thing we're going to have you do is just choke out Robbie on camera.
Oh, perfect. That'll be a hot start.
Yeah, that'll be good for our, just get people in. We'll get a lot of views from that. Okay. Where I want to start is your very first experience fighting, wrestling on the boys team in high school. Why did you get into that? Like, what drew you to that, given that I assume you were the only girl on the team?
My first year, I was one of two. So my best friend and I decided to join, and it was actually her idea. So all the good ideas that seemed like terrible ideas, but turned out, in hindsight to be the pivotal moment, haven't been my idea. Okay. So, to say that I was drawn to wrestling isn't even true. I honestly wasn't. I thought guys rolling around in skin-tight singlets was very weird.
It is, in fairness.
In fairness. I mean, when you watch it from an outsider's perspective, you're like, it's a little strange. But she was like, do you want to go out for wrestling? And I said, well, why not? That's just my personality. It's like, why not? Yeah. What's the worst that can happen?
You're willing to try stuff.
I'm willing to try things. I'm willing to get out of the comfort zone. So I said, yeah, sure, let's do it. So I went home, I asked my mom, and she was like, I don't think you are do you understand what you're getting yourself into? Like, you're not going to like this. And I was like, well, can I just go out for wrestling? Can I just try it tomorrow? And she was like, yeah, sure. I'm not going to tell you can't because you're a girl, which I'm very grateful for because I would say cool. 99% of other parents were telling their daughters that they couldn't go out for wrestling.
No wrestling.
Yeah, it was a boy sport. So I did. And then my first day, I fell in love with it. It was the hardest thing I had ever done.
So why did you love it? It was because it was hard or because it was weird?
Because it was hard.
Yeah.
Because it was so hard.
Had you done sports before?
I had done sports before. So I was used to digging deep. I'd run cross country. I'd play volleyball, track and field, but soccer, but nothing that was that extreme. I mean, the physical contact, the challenge, and I'm going up against guys that have gone through puberty. So essentially, there is definitely a strength difference. And I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So I was absolutely getting mopped. But
how did they accept you or not accept you? Did they think it was weird, or were they like?
Yeah, they basically treated us like we were misplaced and that we missed the memo.
Yeah.
So it's just like, put it on them, show them what it really takes to be a wrestler, and they'll quit.
Okay.
But my mentality was like, holy shit. I was like, I remember like leaving practice, my hair was a mess. I had mat burns all over me, even my face. And I was just like so discombobulated. And I was like, that was fucking awesome.
Yeah.
It's like, I just loved it. I don't know, because it was so hard. And I just was drawn to it. I wanted to get better at it. And I think that was the difference, is that basketball was the only women's sport offered in the winter season.
Okay.
And basketball is not my sport. I just don't like it. I'm very white. I don't jump high. I can't shoot the ball. I don't have good eye-hand coordination. Those are not my strengths. So
everything working against you.
Yeah, not that I was any better at wrestling, but I had a draw towards wrestling. Okay. So I said, I'm going to keep coming back every day. And the law of diminishing return, I definitely got better faster because I sucked so bad at the beginning. But so I was competing against guys. So it was rare that I won.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I never won a match against any male athlete.
That says something, because I feel like most people, if they're not, the win is ultimately kind of the goal.
Right.
And getting a win reinforces you to keep going, but you were just like, screw it, I'm going to keep going whether or not I get the win or not. So was it just kind of this, what was reinforcing that you could see yourself getting better? Or what, like, why'd you keep going?
It was, for me, it was redefining what a win is. So, a win technically is, you pin or you tech the other person. Yeah. But for me, since that wasn't an option, my win was not getting pinned. If I could not get pinned, that was a win, right? I gave up 5 points for the team and not 6. That was a win.
Cool.
So I just changed the standard in my own mind, in my own book, of what I thought a victory looked like for me and what was attainable for me. And a win in every day in practice was not quitting, not giving up, just getting my ass kicked basically, and still managing to show up and get through a practice. So every single practice was a giant victory for me. And sometimes we would be doing strength and conditioning or running sprints at the end of practice is very common. We would have these kind of ladder drills where it'd be like, you would do like 10 back and forth. And then it was like relays. And I remember that was like my time to shine, where I could beat some of the guys sometimes because I had the will and determination to push harder than they would. That would be the time where some of them would be like, I'm tired, and they'd start slacking off. And I absolutely would not. So that was where I would win. I might be passing them on, and they'd be like, oh, and they'd be like trying to run faster and like catch up to me, like, oh, I can't let the girl beat me. But sometimes I would, and that was a win for me. So those were my victories.
So then how did that shift into MMA? So you do wrestling in high school, and then what leads to MMA?
So, to give you a little context, so it's not that I never got a win either, because there was sometimes I would wrestle girls. It was rare, but every once in a while I would.
Were there any, so you grew up in Washington, were there any high schools that had like a women's wrestling team? No.
Not while I was there. It was the year after I graduated that some teams started doing, including my high school, started a women's wrestling team.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I would argue you're probably the reason why that ended up happening. You and other girls are like, hey, we don't care. We're going to show up and do it. Yeah, everyone's going to say, let's get them out of here. We're going to just try and kick their ass and they'll quit. But you didn't quit. And then that opened the door to a whole new thing for a lot of other girls, which is awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, I although I didn't have any verbal say in it, I hope that maybe my example of just what girls can do and the value that we brought, and that it would be a lot more fair if we could get women's wrestling across the board. So someone somewhere saw that there were enough women out there straggling on the men's teams that maybe they could put together actually a women's program. And so that ended up happening, and that was great. And still to this day, my high school has a women's wrestling team, and so do I think most of the high schools across Washington State. And women have their own state championships, and it's really great. So my senior year, actually, my junior year was the first year that they implemented a women's state sort of presence. So we didn't have regionals, districts and all this elimination because there weren't enough women. But what we did have happen was that during the men's state wrestling championship rounds, they would wrestle and then they would have a break. and the women would get to come out and they would collectively kind of do a round robin. So it was like 4 of us in a bracket, and we would wrestle there in the Tacoma Dome under the lights, and it was just still so amazing.
Awesome.
So that was really cool. I broke my ankle 2 weeks before the very first state tournament for women, and I was like, oh, I was so sad. But luckily I had my senior year, so I came back my senior year and I won it. So when I did get to wrestle females, I won.
Yeah, awesome.
But I never really beat the guys. They were just too far ahead of me and too strong. Yeah. So then I went into college and I went to Central Washington University. And my friend Rosalia, who does karate, she was my neighbor in my dorm. And she said, Miesha, I found this mixed martial arts club sport. I think that you should come be a part of it. And actually, I rejected the idea the first time because I thought it was karate. Okay. Because she did karate. And I was like, that was just a little too far. I had gone one direction down in mixed martial arts, and it wasn't the karate direction. It wasn't stand up. It wasn't the suit. It wasn't any of that stuff. I was like, I'd rather wrestle, now awkwardly in a skin tight singlet than I would be in a karate suit. Yeah. So I actually rejected the idea first. And she came back to me after going on her own and said, you got to come check this out. It's a bunch of, college wrestlers. So they had cut the wrestling program the year prior. So some of the guys hadn't transferred out. Yeah, at my college. Okay. So a few of them had put together this mixed martial arts club sport program. It's 2 days a week. I said, all right, fine. You said the word wrestling. You said the keyword. Said they're the wrestlers. I think I could handle that. Yeah. So I went. And on my very first day, I fell in love with it. I started learning what jiu-jitsu was. I learned arm bars. And I remember learning how to choke someone on my first day, and I was absolutely sold.
That's all it takes.
It's all it takes.
You just need to learn to choke someone out.
Basic chokehold, and I was hooked. Yeah. Awesome. So, but I had no desire to fight, but that changed quickly too.
Well, so a fight comes up, you say yes, but isn't it like 3 weeks out or something?
Yeah. So it was, I don't know, I've been maybe doing this Tuesdays and Thursdays for maybe a month, which was, we were just dabbling. I mean, I'm learning the basics of what things are even called, right? It's just fun. And then I get invited by that team to go and watch my first live MMA event, which is all amateur fighters. So there's like a lot of the kids from the Indian reservation who train in their backyard gyms and, they watch UFC. And so they try to mimic the moves. And then there's some other amateur fighters that actually go to like Yakima MMA, which is where, you get a little bit more real training, I suppose. Yeah. But I mean, these kids on the reservation are no joke. Like they're just tough. And they won't give up and they won't tap. And they're actually really good considering that they have like no guidance.
No guidance.
Just guidance
a backyard
whatsoever.
Trying to figure things out.
Yes. And so a lot of times they match up. And so anyways, I'm watching these fights and I'm watching this just the heart and determination and the warrior spirit on full display. And I was like a moth to a flame. I had never thought of fighting in a sport context. I'd always thought of fighting in a problematic, violent, you've got issues, you don't know how to regulate your nervous system. I mean, maybe I wasn't thinking that at the time, but now I look at that, it's like, you don't know how to keep yourself cool. I didn't have any issues like that. I didn't want to fight people. I wasn't a violent person. Right. But when I saw it in the sport context of mixed martial arts, I was like, this is incredible. This is the ultimate battle. This is hand-to-hand combat. This is like physical chess, problem solving. Yeah,
because there's all these different disciplines you can draw from, and you have to figure out what am I going to do in this certain context. Whereas wrestling, the rules are more. There's more rules. There's only so many things you can do, but this opens it up where there's more. Correct. To your point, chess.
Yes. So that high pressure problem solving situation really appealed to me. And I remember sitting there as the audience was leaving, and I was just taking it in. I was just everything that I had seen. Granted, there were no women that fought on that card that night, but at the end of the fight card, there was an announcement, and they said, if there are any women in the audience, in 3 weeks, we're going to have an all-female fight card. And I said, what? Women do this? I said, well, if they can do it, I can do it. Why not? So I just went down there, no manager, no coach, no parents, 19 years old, and I signed up.
Awesome.
And then 3 weeks later, I had my first fight.
How'd it go?
Well, okay, let me tell you. I didn't win. I'm going to start you with that, okay? I didn't win.
You only had 3 weeks.
Yeah.
3 weeks in a dream.
Yeah, 3 weeks in a dream. I don't even know what the dream was, honestly. I was just like flying by the seat of my pants because honestly, like there was not a place for women's fighting in this world. There was no money and there was no opportunity. So it was pure passion.
Right. Well, I think too, back then, I mean, UFC is huge now. But to your point about what you thought about fighting, it being like, oh, this is a bad thing, society frowns on it. I feel like that's almost how the UFC and MMA was perceived for a very long time until it had to hit a certain enough people seeing it in this sport context to go, oh, this is actually really interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And at that time, it was commonly phrased as human cockfighting.
Right.
It was barbaric. It was, bar brawling. It was not seen as something that, women would do. And or most companies wouldn't put their name on it. Sponsors were not, avidly supporting this. It was just,
they had
nobody wanted to touch it.
They had like Mickey's hard liquor or whatever as the sponsor. That's like who would
and
sign up
tap out.
Yeah, and
tap out.
Right.
Yeah. So it was very taboo. And for me to be drawn to it at that point was, I can't explain it other than I guess it was destiny. It was meant to be. So my first fight. So I'm fighting Liz Posner. Okay. She's a kickboxer from, I think it was like Vancouver, Canada. Yeah, she was up in Canada. And we were fighting in Wenatchee, Washington. And I made all of $50 because that was like to cover my gas, basically. Mm-hmm. I drove a little tiny tin can, a Kia Rio. So I drive from Central Washington to Wenatchee. And I've had 3 weeks of striking training and jujitsu because, those are two big parts of it. So I'm pretty much still just a wrestler.
Yeah.
So remember, I took her down in our first exchange, and it was honestly the easiest takedown I've ever gotten in my life. And I remember kind of admiring my work for a second and being like, wow, that was so easy compared to, I never get to take guys down like that.
Yeah.
It was easy. And then I just kind of think I just wrestled her almost the whole round. I don't even think I really punched on the ground because I still was that much of a novice that I had forgotten.
It didn't even occur to you.
I
I could punch this person.
Yeah, I couldn't even let go with one arm because I didn't know how to do that. I was just like, you have to pin them. Like you use all of your body when you're trying to pin someone,
Sure.
So I doubt that I even really punched her. And then the second round, they kind of made some adjustment and they got me in a Muay Thai clinch, which is like, they kind of wrap their hands, you probably know, hands and arms, hands behind your neck, and the arms kind of come in front of your collarbone. So it's kind of like this crowbar. It feels like a crowbar anyways. It's kind of forcing your head down and they're pushing into your collarbone. And I'm stuck in this and I have no idea how to get out of it. And so she begins throwing knees right up the center towards my face. Now, this is before there were any rules or regulations for amateurs to protect. Most amateurs now, you're not allowed to do this kind of stuff. And you have gear on to protect, knee pads, things like that. Not here. We were on a reservation and there were no rules and no real medics or anything like that either. So one knee comes straight up and clean on smashes my nose. I just hear the crunch, I hear the break, and then the warmth of the blood
just starts gushing,
pouring down into my mouth, down my chin. But I'm not ready to give up. But I'm like, I think my eyes got real wide for a second. I was like, oh my
this
God.
is real.
Yeah, like that sounded like my nose breaking. I had not experienced that before. So I'm still trying to wrestle her at this point. I'm trying to grab onto these knees that are flying towards my face. And I think I'm driving so hard into her that I kind of start to get out of this tie clinch by moving down from her hips, down to her knees, down to her ankles. Like I'm just trying to dive at anything to take her down. And you get down to an ankle and think she steps out and she gets onto my back. So now she's on my back like a little backpack. And I am sitting there on my knees and my elbows. And she's trying to choke me. So I'm turtled up. I've got my neck, sucked into my shoulders. And as she's trying to choke me, I'm watching the blood pour from my face. And this pool of blood is getting bigger in front of my eyes. And I can still see it so vividly.
It's like a movie.
It's like a movie. It was such a surreal moment for me. And that's really the moment I think that a fighter was born in me. Where I knew that I had to make a choice in that moment because everything slowed down. It was just like being in the eye of the tornado. Mm-hmm. And there was a first moment of clarity that I had in the fight when I was like, what am I going to do about this? I was like, I'm going to kick her ass.
Awesome.
So I began.
That's so interesting because there's really only two options at that point, right?
Yep.
Some people would go, okay, I'm done. I'm watching all this blood pour from my nose and spread out into a small lake on this ring, or I'm going to kill this person. And you went into that mode.
Yep. And I lost, is the only time I think in a fight that I've ever lost my temper. And I got mad and I started to do like a hula hooping motion and I peeled her hook out and she fell down underneath me basically by design. And I stood up and I was raining down punches. I mean, from the ceiling to the ground. And I remember, the look on her face, like she was looking away and there was blood
on her.
From me.
Right. Your blood on her.
Yeah, I was bleeding all over her. And that was where the round ended. And so that's the end of round 2.
Mm-hmm.
So I go back, I'm pumped up. I finally got like the fight flowing through my veins because I didn't come out that way. I was very calm coming out. I wasn't nervous and I was very calm. It wasn't until I really realized what I had gotten myself into and that I had to fight my way out. It's not a wrestling match. This is a fist fight and a knee fight, evidently. And so I went back and my corners looked like they had seen a ghost. They didn't know what to do with this information. They'd never cornered a girl that had been taking this kind of damage.
Yeah.
And they threw the towel in.
Oh, really? They did it for you.
They did it for me.
So you're ready to go.
I'm ready to go.
And they disagree.
They disagree.
And they have the towel.
They have the towel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. What did you feel after that happened? Were you pissed?
I was frustrated, but I also was only a 19-year-old girl and kind of, I wasn't very strong and confident yet. So I also, while I was bummed out, I looked at it as like my fault. I didn't necessarily look at it as like they had made the wrong decision. I'm like, well, they must know. I'm still kind of like a child in some ways, I mean, 19 years, I was still like, and I wasn't a super sassy, strong girl at that point. I was very much like, I was still introverted. I was still like unsure of like who I am. And I think that's why I like these individual challenges because it was like proving something to me about that I am strong and that I do have a sense of confidence. But in every other way, I think I lacked that.
Yeah.
In the way that I express myself. So I was thinking that, I didn't do enough. This is my fault. It's more of a self-doubt and a self-reflection. I was like, I have to do better. But I wanted to go out for the third round and I just didn't have the courage to protest or to think any different than what I did, So I never did get a chance at redemption in that one, but I did continue fighting and I won my next 6 fights and then I turned pro.
When did you feel like you started to get the MMA thing?
I would say over the next 6 fights, I felt like winning was, it redefined what winning was because it was going up against women. So now winning could actually be just, the actual objective of like getting your hand raised. So I think I started to feel like I understand the full context after that first fight. And I understand that I just need to prepare differently. And that's really what it boiled down to me was a lack of preparation. There's nothing in this world that I can think of that you'd want to be great at and you would only prepare for 3 weeks.
Yeah. You just needed to put the time in.
I just needed to put the time in.
The right resources.
So, and I knew that from wrestling. I knew that if I showed up every day and I worked hard, that I would get better. And so that's what I dedicated myself to doing.
Yeah. So then you get in the UFC. You start winning a bunch. I want to hear about the mental side of that. Like what's going through your head during the walkout? Are you calm? Are you ramped up? Like what were those like?
It's almost like a possession.
Interesting.
It's almost like being slightly possessed because there's this alternate realm, I guess is the only way that I could explain it, where something from within you that's normally like locked in a cage and is put away and you're very unaware of this power that exists within you. But once the walkout begins, it's like that just floodgate opens. And all of a sudden you become this supercharged version that you're almost unaware of.
Yeah.
And so it feels so surreal and almost not like you, but it's like being in this flow state at the same time. So it's a very interesting experience, I think, walking out and feeling the change. But I've experienced different walkouts. I would say that is something I developed more into. I think maybe a little bit earlier in my career. I was still kind of like, it was a little bit more fun and light, but then winning became more important and it became more serious and it became everything.
Because the stakes get higher.
Stakes get higher.
The higher you climb, the higher the stakes.
Correct.
Yeah.
So the pressure, I think, also developed into this sort of like alternate, I had to break into like new heights, I feel like, to really be the best version of myself. And it's quite an experience, I will say. So
your possession almost sounds like you're super energized, but you're also kind of calm.
Exactly.
You're just like, you got a mission.
Yes. Laser focused.
Yeah.
I mean, like nothing else matters. You are honed in and you have one goal and you're willing to die for that goal.
Yeah.
And so whatever it takes to come from within you for that goal, for that night, for those 15 minutes is just everything that you have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when the bell goes, are you afraid at any point?
No.
Why do you think that is?
I think that fear isn't necessary, to be honest, for a goal. I mean, you could define it, as in a way that fear is a motivator. You could say that there's fear, but when most people who are not fighters think of fear, they're like, oh, run away, scared, right? Like, oh, that's scary. I don't want to do that. It's like it's a different type of fear. There is a heavy appreciation for the cost of loss. There's a heavy appreciation for the cost of injury, and so because you so badly don't want those things, you fear them in a respect way. It's like you don't want that and you know that it could happen. So therefore you must overcome it.
Mm-hmm.
And you must not let it, you can't handicap
Set it aside almost.
Yeah, set it aside and or use it as a motivator. So it's like a translation of fear in a sense.
I imagine you have to be very present in the fight, right? Yeah. You have to always be paying attention and focused.
You're supposed to be.
Yeah.
I've had a couple fights where I wasn't, and that was an extremely odd situation.
What threw it off, do you think? Did you have to learn to do things to remain present, or would that just sort of fade and you couldn't figure it out, or what?
Yeah, I would say the latter part of my career before I retired, so we're talking maybe 2014 to 2016, 17, I slowly started to become less and less present in my fights. So it was harder for me to access that exact point. I didn't feel like I was honed in quite as well as I needed to be. And I either, if I won, I ignored that was there. But if I lost, I was a loser and it was the worst thing in the world to experience.
So you're hard on yourself.
Very hard on myself. And also the rest of my life, like my personal life, that's really what I think drowned out my ability to hone in. I had some really bad coping skills. And because I was a strong person who could endure, I did, but in many ways that I shouldn't have.
Yeah.
So I was in a really toxic relationship for 9 years.
It was mainly relationship stuff that was bad.
Yeah. So my significant other at the time was also a fighter.
Okay.
And also sort of my coach and trainer. And just kind of claws deep was just a very controlling kind of person, a very like belittling kind of person. And I guess that's like lightly glossing over it. But it was tough. It was really tough for me to be able to maintain everything that I needed to when I felt like I was drowning. It's like trying to tread water with, a 20-pound weight on your foot. It's like almost impossible.
Especially as it ramps up over time.
Correct.
Like
you get just more tired.
Yeah, those things tend to, the relationship doesn't become like that overnight. It probably progresses. And meanwhile, you're also progressing in your career. So it's kind of like these two things getting bigger and bigger and bigger until
it comes to a head.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had really convinced myself that if I won my world title, that I would become happy. I would be happy. The happiness was on the other side of becoming a champion. So instead of addressing all the things that were going on, I just simply moved it over and said, well, this is why, because I haven't become a world champion
yet. Because you
yet.
don't have the title.
Yeah, and when I become a world champion, everything will be fixed.
Everything will be perfect.
Everything will be dandy and golden. And then when I got to the other side of being the champ, my whole world came crashing down.
What happened?
I went into a deep depression. I thought that I needed to fight again because that's what I did in the past. Was like when things got really bad, I just fought and I would win. And it was kind of like this temporary fix, it's a temporary high. But ultimately what happened is that I saw behind the curtain. I saw that it didn't fix anything.
Yeah.
Because the problem wasn't winning or losing. It was me. And it was my life. And it was my current situation and the things that I was allowing to happen in my life. And I needed to do some soul searching and fix some things and move through some trauma and unpack things. So I was just so busy, always being busy, always in the pursuit of something, never really sitting with myself or listening to myself. Dare I listen to myself because that wasn't important. The mission was when these fights, that was important. And that required no listening to yourself. You show up like a soldier and you just do what you have to do.
Follow the plan like a robot.
Follow the plan like a robot. And so I had disregarded and disassociated myself in so many ways that by the time I got to being a world champion, I was so broken and I had no idea. I had no idea until I won the championship and I was like, this didn't fix anything. And then the illusion was gone. So it's like, well, if that doesn't fix anything, then what will?
Now what?
Yeah, what will? It's like, well, maybe I need to fight again. Maybe I need to defend the belt because once you defend the belt, then you're truly a champion.
Yeah.
Right? So you've got to defend the belt.
Kind of, yeah.
So I was like, well, then that must be what's wrong, right? So I'm still under this, And I was just a mess in every single way. Going into my title fight and going into my defense fight and a lot of the fights before that, but the competition thickens. And the more that you take away from yourself and your ability to show up at a higher level matters because it's just, a game of slim margins. So I managed to get it done in the 5th round against Holly Holm with the rear naked choke when I was up against it with the.
How'd you manage to pull that off? Tell us about that fight.
Yeah, okay. So I'll tell you about the fight. So first round, Holly Holm gets a 10-9. So this is like 10-point mess system. And so she wins the round. So we stay on the feet. We don't hit the ground. I'm clearly the grappler. She's clearly the striker. Okay. Now, she just knocked out Ronda Rousey with the head kick. The head kick that was heard around the world.
That was big.
That was huge. And she's got all this boxing experience. So, she's a great striker and she's a legit threat. Yeah. And first round, I don't get it to the ground. It's okay. Come back. Coaches are like, hey, it's all right. We'll go back out there. They're like, now we have our timing and let's get this one. So second round, I get it to the ground very quickly and I'm doing damage. I'm dropping elbows. I'm on top of her the entire round. She doesn't get back up. I think I get close to a rear naked in that round, but I didn't get the choke. So this judges score that round a 10-8. Now, we don't know that because they don't have open scoring.
Right.
So in the second round, I'm technically up a round on her, even though the third round hasn't happened. Okay. But nobody really knows that. Yeah. So we go into the third round. She skirts around. She does her thing. I don't get her down. So she wins that round. Fourth round happens. She does her thing. She moves around. She sticks and moves.
She's elusive.
I'm not hurt at all, but I'm losing rounds. So we're thinking it's 3-1 round. Technically, it was 3-2.
Okay.
But either way, in the 5th round, it's a do or die round. All the things that we had gone into that first round or the whole fight conceptually was like, hey, let's be smart and let's get the right timing and let's not get knocked out trying to pursue a takedown. So I'm in the 5th round and we're basically like, we got to throw it all to the wind. We got to throw all the caution. I was like, I realized that in my mind that if I wanted to become a world champion, I had to be okay with getting knocked out. I had to be okay with the most brutal, difficult loss of my life on the major platform of, Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz, all eyeballs on. That's going to be seen by millions of people. I had to be okay with like the worst outcome.
Yeah.
In order to have a chance.
How'd you accept that or flip that switch?
I think I just knew it and I was willing to do it. I really, every time that I've stepped into the octagon, have been willing to essentially pay the ultimate sacrifice. I think that changed a little bit after I had kids, but at that point I was absolutely ready to literally die. I mean, I would have died for that opportunity.
Yeah.
No questions asked. So to get knocked out, if it had to be on such the gravity of the scale, I was willing to risk it. And, that was the only chance I had to win. So I had to risk it.
Yeah.
So I go out in that round and I take a Hail Mary takedown. It wasn't very good and it was far away and I barely got my hands around her hips. She was a little too far away. So I swung myself around outside and kind of behind her and kind of like threw her down. So think of like throwing an anchor off of a ship or something. It was kind of this like big looping thing that I did. And I scrambled onto her back and she's trying to stand up and I'm trying to get this choke in. And I lock an arm under her throat. And then I feel that I secure the choke with the second arm. Mm-hmm. And she is, she's doing everything she can to get out of this choke. So we're standing kind of against the fence and then she tries to basically flip me off of her back over her head, which causes both of us to kind of do a somersault because I wasn't letting go. I was like, at this point, I'm like dog on a bone. I'm locked on.
Because she probably has the opposite approach going into this. She goes, if I can just keep this person away from me, I'll probably win.
Correct.
So it's like it's this crazy push and pull where your styles are totally opposite.
Totally opposite. Yeah. So she's trying to create space and get me off of her, but I have the choke. And I know that I have it. And so I am hanging on. And I've been in all kinds of positions, upside down, north, south, like you name it. I mean, there's not a position on the ground I haven't experienced. So her trying to throw me off from a standing back position was just like a fun little roller coaster ride. I just rolled right through, flipped, and I still had the choke. And then, it was a few seconds later, she was punching the air because she was dreaming. And then
and she was out.
Yeah, she was out and she didn't tap. And the referee pulled me off. And then I realized that
you'd won.
I was the new UFC bantamweight women's world champion.
What did that feel like?
It was the most incredible feeling to in my life.
Where was that fight?
That fight was at the MGM Grand.
Okay.
Yeah. I wanted to say T-Mobile Arena for a second because that's where they do them now. But I was like, no, this is back when it was at the MGM. Yeah.
But then how long did it take where you're like, oh, that didn't solve everything?
2 weeks.
2 weeks? Yeah. So you got rode a nice high for 2 weeks?
Yeah. I don't think I slept for 2 days and I wasn't tired. I mean, I was absolutely wired. I was so pumped. Yeah. But then life goes back to normal. The media moves on. The fans, all that stuff. It's it's cool, but it just...
Once things settle, they settle.
They settled. Yeah. Once the dust settled, I knew. I was like, oh no, this was supposed to be the high point. This was supposed to be the best point. And I would say I started to be at one of my worst points at that point.
Yeah. And then you take another fight. How far away was the defending your title?
It was, I think, about 6 months.
6 months.
Yeah.
And that was that in New York?
That one, no, that was 2 fights later. So I fought Amanda Nunes also we were at the T-Mobile.
Okay.
Yeah. I fought her there. I think it was maybe the first card there. Mm-hmm. UFC 200 or 205, 200. So long ago now. So happens when you get hit in the head for a living. But I fought her and, I feel like that big catalyst of, when she beat me, it was like she went on a run and she just demolished the division for a really long time.
Yeah,
so
she had a good run.
She sure did. And now she's coming back. So that's cool. Yeah. But she hit really hard and I had a horrible weight cut. I didn't realize at the time that my Hashimoto's had gotten so bad. So I had been,
You realized you had it though?
I had hypothyroidism. Mm-hmm. And I've since been diagnosed with Hashimoto's.
Okay.
But I did not know, I wasn't diagnosed with Hashimoto's at the time, but the doctor who diagnosed me with Hashimoto's was like, well, how long have you had a slow thyroid? And I was like, well, I first got diagnosed when I was 19, but I kind of poo-pooed it. Yeah. I took the medication for a little bit, but I don't like taking medications. I won't even take an aspirin or an Advil unless I absolutely have to. Even surgeries, things like that, I try to take 0 medications. So I was like, I think I researched it and I was like, I'll just eat healthier. And it didn't really seem to make a difference until way later, 10 years later in my career, that I was having trouble bringing my weight down. Yeah. I was eating like a rabbit and working out insane. And I still wasn't dropping the weight that I would normally move. So the weight cuts became hellacious. Mm-hmm. And that's not a good combination when you have hard weight cuts and then you are getting hit in the head. You're more likely to get rocked and knocked out because you can pull water actually from basically the fluid in your brain, which is wild. And that increases your chances of experiencing a knockout or just an equilibrium issue when you're pulling that much weight and you're in that much heat for that long. So I mean, we usually do this in majority of the weight cuts were either in a very hot bath or in a sauna. In a
sauna, yeah. So you mentioned you have to stay present when you're fighting, right? But someone might punch you in the face.
Yeah.
It's like that Mike Tyson quote, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yeah.
How would you react to that and try and stay present even after you just get smashed?
Oh, that is like the ultimate. If you're not present, you are now. So it's only helpful.
So that helps.
Yeah. If you were not totally zoned in or honed in, then you are after you get hit in the face. I mean, at least I was. I think most fighters experience that. I can't speak for all, but sometimes certain fighters need to get hit before what they call wake up, like, when they get hit, they like wake up and they turn it on even more. That was me.
Yeah.
I kind of I went in like focused, but then when I would get hit, it helped me reach a new level of like competitive, focus, presence. Really just snapped me right into the moment.
Yeah. Do you find there's a transferability for the average person or even in your day-to-day life where it's like sometimes something needs to happen for a person to kind of wake up, as you put it?
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes people just got to get hit in the face, metaphorically. I mean, that's life though. It will, hand you your ass sometimes. And I think that it's all for a reason. And I think that it would be beneficial for people to step outside of what is like comfortable for them more often, because that is usually when you experience something that's really difficult and kind of shakes you or shakes your foundation or challenges you in a way. And I think when we have those challenge moments, that's where the opportunity is. That's where the opportunity is to like get to the other side. But if we never even approach the bridge, like how do we ever get to the other side? How do we ever figure out, what opportunities lie ahead of us, what we're really made of, what we're really drawn to, what we're really great at, unless you're willing to put yourself out there a little bit. And you got to be willing to fail too. I absolutely think that failure is such an important part. And I've read a lot of books on, the psychology and how the human brain works and how the female brain works. And one thing that I've learned, which I implemented much later in my career. So I retired after I lost, not when I lost my belt, but I came back and I fought one more time in New York, as you mentioned. Okay. And I was absolutely not present in that fight. I was somewhere else entirely, which is such a weird experience.
Because you win the belt, you have this 2-week high. Now all of a sudden life starts to get real. You go, oh, this didn't solve all my problems. You lose the belt and you're like, all right, was the idea if I get the
one more,
start getting back at the belt, then maybe it'll resolve
Even
itself.
Though I knew already that it wasn't, but it was the only thing I had because I had not taken the time to resolve any issues with myself.
Yeah.
So I was still using the same broken system. And I thought it would work if I did it better somehow. Even though I was like coming to the harsh realization that there was way more that needed to be done than just winning fights. What I was going to say though is that when you do something incorrectly, so let's say I'll say this about training in a gym setting.
Yeah.
Let's say that I am drilling a double leg and I'm going to do it 100 times. Every time I do it well, that's in your brain, the way the human brain works, it's like, that's great, but it's not really like acknowledged. I think you're reinforcing the wiring, the myelin. But when you do it wrong, your body really cues on how to do it right. So it's only because of the incorrect that you really, really hone in on how to do it correctly. Yeah. So it was really, I'm trying to remember what that book was now, but it was fascinating about the myelin in the brain. It's basically how I look at it in like a layman's terms. It's like we have these pathways that we call it muscle memory in fighting. It's like the term that we use, but these pathways that run through your brain, and the more that you do this certain path, the more efficient that the firing of that network and connection that you're going to do it correctly is strengthened. So you lay this, like you wrap around that. So you make sure that this doesn't fire off to the left or the right, but it goes right where it's supposed to go. That's muscle memory, the things that you don't have to think about doing anymore. It's like whenever you've done a craft or you've done anything, your yard work, whatever, you become more efficient at it as you're going because you're learning to hone in on it, right? It's like with everything that you do.
And
even
those negatives like reinforce how to do it right.
Exactly.
They're more powerful.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, they're more powerful.
Yeah.
So that's what I started doing, was realizing that it's not about being perfect in every gym session. It's honestly about showing up and being willing to learn from your mistakes.
To have the mistakes, because those teach you the right way.
And so I think
it's like the extreme cases. How do you learn how not to touch the stove that's red? You touch it once and you never do it again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because you can tell your kids, until you're blue in the face, don't touch it because it's hot. But every kid has to burn themselves at some point before they really get it. Because they can't have your experience by living through you vicariously. You could try, but it just doesn't work like that. It's not how humans were designed. So I encourage people to try to do things where they know they're going to fail. You like do something on purpose where like you're definitely not going to get this right. Like get out on a wakeboard. Yeah. Go skiing, go snowboarding for the first time. Like you're not going to get it. You're not going to have this totally right. But it's fun. So it's great to learn and be expansive on, I think, the way that you approach your life. And that does translate into everyday life, I think.
Yeah.
It just makes quality of life better.
You have 2 kids, 6 and 8. Is that right? How do you apply this with them in parenting? That's a really great question. Well, I put them in situations where I know that they're not going to totally be successful. And a big part of that is sport. Yeah. A big part of it is where they... What sports do they play?
So my son does jiu-jitsu. My daughter does kickboxing.
I was going to ask if you let them fight.
I mean, that's a loose term. I don't think I have a choice in that. But if
they're into it.
I hope that they don't.
Because your husband has a fighting background, right?
He does. Yeah. I hope that they don't, because as the mother in me is like, I don't want to see them go down that path. But if they do, I would do everything that I can to make them the best. And I will support that 100%. Because it's their life.
They'd have a good fight team, I'll say.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Well, maybe a little better start than most. But I try to put them in situations where I know that they are going to struggle. And I don't do everything for them. I refuse to. I know that if it's difficult for them, I'm like, that's good. So it's situations of like, I could think of like swimming or something like that. It's like, Mom, I can't get that coin off the bottom of the pool. Can you get it for me? It's like, well, let's think about this for a second. What if you take a few deep breaths and you really focus, take a couple peeks in the water? And I try to like guide them through. I was like, but you can do it. Yeah. I'm not going to do it for you. So it's a matter of putting them constantly in those situations of like something that's difficult and they're asking for help, and me saying, basically, I'm here for you, but I'm not doing it for you. Because I know you're capable of that within reason. Obviously, there's things that they really can't do that's like, okay, I can step in as a parent and be an example and show them how to do it. But no, I love every challenge that comes to my kids, and I don't want to solve the problem for them. I want to know that when they're on their own, that they can problem solve. Yeah. And that's an important skill set. So,
And teaching them that the failure, like with the coin at the bottom of the pool, they're going to go down. They're probably going to miss it the first 3 times. Yep. But that's how they learn ultimately. Yeah. So you're just there kind of going, here's what I'd do in your situation, but why don't you try it? Oh, you didn't get it. What'd you learn from that? Try it again.
Yes, exactly. Instead of just being like, don't get it, or I'll get it for you, or, and that goes in every single situation. It's how I approach each opportunity. And a lot of the opportunities are not planned. It's not something that I'm trying to do for them, but it's like, I just try to give them the skills that I can give them, but I want them to problem solve for themselves. Yeah.
Okay. So with kind of getting your mind right before a fight, a lot of it you said comes from, you fail, you learn things along the way. Did you do anything specific though to get present? Like, would you do things like visualization or meditation, and what would that look like?
Yeah, I did a lot of visualization. Yeah. A lot. I would sit and I would have my walkout, and I would be laying in bed and I would think of these things, or sitting in a chair. And then I always visualized, and I'm not going to say that this was necessarily, it's interesting. Let's play this out. So I would visualize, getting knocked down and getting back up. I would visualize that of like not giving up, that moment of adversity where you assume you're going to experience that in a fight and then you've got to get back up. Now, the problem is that I would experience this almost every fight, I think, because I kind of talked it into existence. It was like, okay, I need that moment to happen and then the win happens. So maybe a little short-sighted in like what I was actually trying to accomplish, but
what would you have done differently?
I think now I would do it a little different in the sense that, well, I did start to do it differently. I started to focus more on the things that I really, really wanted out of each moment. Not the things that I needed to fall back on, but the best things, like what I really wanted out of every single moment in the fight. And that was getting the takedown, getting the ground and pound, so I focused on all those positives because, and maybe there was something to be said about having the preparation of like getting through the hard times. But at this point, I knew that the proof was in the pudding. Like, I know that I'm tough. I don't think that I have to prove it or that I have to focus on visualizing that because that's not what I want to happen in a fight. That's what will happen. And I know that I already trust that in myself because I've already put myself in this situation. So I've built that trust response that I know that I'll keep pushing. I know that I will keep fighting. I know that I won't give up. So we're not going to plan for it. We know that it's there. But what we are going to focus on is the things that we want to accomplish in this fight. And so that was kind of my approach later. And I think that it worked. It worked really well. I fought my very best fight against Julia Avila December 3rd, 2023. And
what made that fight your best?
Synergistic. It was everything came together. It was the first fight in my life that I prepared for as a woman. That's going to sound really strange. I know. I knew that was going to be the question.
I'm a guy.
Right.
I need that unpacked.
So every fight before that, I had prepared according to a male model. I had never even crossed my mind that there would be a benefit for me to prepare as a woman with the programming for a woman instead of just following exactly what the guys do. And I guess the biggest benefits for me was learning how to work with my biology as opposed to pretending it doesn't exist and then wondering why things are not working as well. You can override things for a really long time. And I became a world champion overriding, but I hurt myself. I hurt myself hormonally. I hurt myself mentally. I hurt myself emotionally. And it's very catastrophic for women when we mess with our hormones because we need 28 days in order to try to do it again all right. You're on a 24-hour hormone cycle. For you, it's like you have different fluctuations, but testosterone's high in the morning, it's a little bit lower in the evening, and then you do it again the next day. For us, essentially, no day is the same. We're constantly either building or rapidly declining in two primary sex hormones, estrogen and progesterone. And while we see, an 8 to 10 time increase of estrogen in the first follicular part of our cycle, then we get a little bit of testosterone, and then we nosedive into the luteal phase, which can feel like being shoved off of a cliff comparatively to the first half of the cycle. And it's not the best time that I have found, and I think most women also will find, to push an 11 out of 10 type of workout. Because progesterone is a bit more of like, it's that nesting hormone sort of. It's the hormone that just goes wild and it increases tremendously during pregnancy. And you'll hear about that like, oh, my wife is like readying the house. She's doing all these things, right? Or my girlfriend or a woman in general. When she has that higher progesterone phase, she's a little bit more likely to want to be like inside and reflective and calm and securing the nest.
Not taking punches in the face.
Yeah, correct. So it's not that we can't do those things during that, but it helps to be aware that we may interpret or produce different results. And here's where it used to be really bad is I never used to understand this. And so in that luteal phase, I would go and spar and I'd be like, why do I suck today? I suck. I'm going to lose this fight. And I would go down this mental spiral.
You get in your head,
Oh, I would get in my head so bad. And I would cry and I'd be so frustrated because you're more emotional during that time anyways, more likely. So it was disastrous just because I didn't understand like, oh, well, I'm just not hormonally at the most optimal time to test myself. But that's difficult to navigate as a female athlete because obviously we still have to navigate and we still have to compete sometimes in the less optimal times in our cycle. And it doesn't mean we can't do that.
Right. The date for the fight gets set
correct
4 months in advance or something. You can't be like, hey, biology,
yes,
mark this on the calendar. We need certain things to happen. Your body doesn't care.
Right. Body doesn't care. No, essentially from that ovulation, middle of the cycle, our bodies consider us pregnant. And here's another thing is I always was following a strict calorie plan and it did not include the luteal phase for a woman. So women every single day in the luteal phase burn 100 to 300 more calories per day.
Doing nothing else,
just metabolically because the body is doing all these things and changing and progesterone is increasing tenfold. So we hear estrogen as like a woman's hormone, right? But I would argue progesterone is even more prominent than estrogen because estrogen raises like 8 to 10 times, and then it's like 10 times that for the progesterone part. So it's massive increase in what progesterone is doing. And there's just two different hormones. And we can experience like our smooth muscle tissue slows down in the luteal phase, which is really interesting. So even the way we digest things and bloat, you hear women complain about that. So what I was saying is that when I started training according to that, when I started saying, well, expectation is here. I'm going to do more of my longer endurance type workouts in the follicular phase. And I'm going to prioritize my heaviest lifting week when I have a little testosterone present, because that's nice for building muscle. Like why not, prioritize? It doesn't mean I wasn't working out or lifting or pushing myself at all phases. But I gave myself permission in my luteal phase to show up differently. And it's usually for me is only about 2 days of the luteal phase where I really feel this heaviness. Like it's almost like I'm moving through water and things are really difficult, but it's somewhere usually in that week before my cycle begins, somewhere in there. And it's like, okay, so for these couple days today, I'm not feeling it. I'm going to adjust my workout plan. And I'm not going to spar today. I'm going to tell my coaches, I work with it. And that's it. And then what happens, instead of digging myself such a hole by still forcing myself to show up the same way in this small window of time when I really don't feel like I'm capable of that, but I could do it if I manually overrode it. But what does it take for me in the long run? Then when my better phase of the cycle shows up again, I'm buried.
Okay, so would you then, how did this affect your weight cuts when you started thinking, from a woman's point of view, did that change how you would do the weight cut thing?
Absolutely. Yeah, the weight cut was so much easier when I started.
What would you change? So you changed basically the type of training you would do. You changed some of your eating day to day based on your cycle. But you still have to do the weight cut. So how would that change?
Yeah, so first of all, I would do my best to schedule the fight even months out. If I had any say or preference, I would schedule it in my follicular phase. It's just much easier. Yeah. And preferably right around ovulation. So remember that fight I was just telling you about that was like everything was synergistic. It was like right over ovulation, which was like testosterone was its highest. So it's just easier to be aggressive. I don't know how to explain that, but it's just like ready to go. I'm just ready to take a head off,
Ready to take a head off, as we all are some days.
So it was just perfect. And the weight cut was great. But it's, if you have to compete and or cut weight in the luteal phase, there's extra preparation, I think, that needs to be accounted for. So you may need to try to diet and get your weight a little bit lower. You may need more time to prepare for something like that. So if you're like, oh man, okay, if it's got to be this date, like I need at least 3 months because I don't want to be on too strict of a calorie deficit. Otherwise hormones start to shut down. I've experienced this multiple times where I've dipped into amenorrhea. So I like completely lost my cycle.
What does that feel like? Are you just...
horrible.
You're just super tired or what?
Yes, it's exhausting. You're exhausted in a fight camp anyways, but hormonally very flat. I guess it's the ways you just feel extremely like bleh, like not really, it's really hard to get there or present in a fight or to care about much of anything because you just feel like a bit of a zombie. And then the worst part of it is the aftermath of trying to get back onto a normal hormonal cycle, just letting your body regulate itself, because again, it takes 28 days before you get to try again and see if it's any better.
It takes a while for those things to come back, even in men. So after I did that long hike, I had Andy Galpin. He tested a bunch of different stuff right before I left and right after I left, and my testosterone just cratered. And even 45 days later, it hadn't built back up, because hormones are one of the last things your body starts to like, all right, let's figure these things out. It just takes a while. And then,
because they're not immediately eminent to your survival that day.
Right.
But if you have good hormone levels and good fertility and these things, it's a sign that you're very like robust and like your longevity is headed in a good direction. Yeah. So crashing that. What was that like for you? I'm curious. Did you feel the difference of like your testosterone being,
I just felt, right after the hike, of course, I just felt way more tired. I'd been walking, 25 miles a day for a month and a half. And once I got back in my garage gym just over there and tried to lift something, I was so weak, and it just felt like death. It was just the worst. Yeah, but feel okay now. And it took a while. It wasn't like, I think people sometimes think, oh, I'll be back in 2 days. Not 2 days. It was, it was probably 2 months.
Yeah.
Easy.
And for me, when I experienced, say, amenorrhea, it would take like a year.
Wow.
A year.
A year.
Well, a year is only 12 cycles.
Yeah.
If you think about it.
Yeah.
And if your cycle's skewed and off, then it can be anywhere between that. It could just be like you missed one for a month. So it's a really long, arduous process to get your hormones back online. So that was rough.
Did that teach you anything about patience?
It taught me a lot about not being so stupid. I'll tell you that much. I'm like, wow, there's a lot I still need to learn. And, like women in general, like this is not something that's talked about enough.
Yeah.
Women are not researched enough. We're really kind of underserved in the medical community and the science community.
Yeah.
And it's tough. I knew that we were talking about it on my podcast yesterday, but
yeah, so you started a podcast that talks a lot about these things. We recorded yesterday. So it was our second day recording, just different podcasts.
Yeah.
How do you tell women to work with these things if they're just generally active? Like they're not holding the belt over their head anytime soon, but they are active. They do want to feel better. These things
can certainly affect the average everyday woman too, because there are a lot, women have a lot of pressure on us to, be thinner and to do more and to, take care of the family and to still work and do all the things. So we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. So 80% of all autoimmune diseases exist in women. Diseases exist in women. And I think that, to me, says we're working against our biology and really hurting ourselves. And it's easier to do that, again, as a woman who is like fluctuating and these two hormones. And progesterone is basically wants the opposite of stress. So it's very impacted by stress. I think all hormones can be impacted by stress, but progesterone is vital. It's a hormone that you need access to carry a successful pregnancy. It is such an important hormone for regulating your cycle. So some women have really long cycles or really horrible, painful cycles. This is usually an indication. It could be something else, but it's worth looking into if it's your hormones. And so I think as a woman, what I would say the very first step is to start tracking your cycle, and anything you notice with that, just jot it down. Voice note it if you have to. I mean, not everybody likes to bust out a pen and paper these days. If you can handwrite it, great. If not, but start noticing any trends, because what I will say is that men have a predictable hormonal cycle, and so do women. They're very different.
Yeah.
But it's actually quite predictable if you pay attention.
You just got to pay attention.
You just got to pay attention. And if you're not paying attention, it can get really difficult. It could get really difficult for you, and it can get really difficult for your significant other, because men want to help out and they want to fix things, but they have no idea how volatile it can be being a woman. So they don't understand how to show up for you unless you can explain this. And luckily there's some science now showing like what women are kind of going through and like what these hormones do to our brains and the way that we show up differently and how you can be supportive, but I still feel like this is not talked about enough.
Yeah.
So in a nutshell for you guys, don't bring up anything hard or like the thing to talk about a week before her period. It's the worst time to do that. So
It's
don't
a good time
add.
to just shut up.
Yeah, just basically shut up and do more.
Yeah.
Like show up for
Shut
her.
up, do more.
Schedule her a
Easy.
massage, make dinner, or just, communicate with her. Let me know how you're feeling. And I want to try to show up for you in the ways that I can. And it's like such a beautiful synergy when that happens. I know that was a big game changer for my partner and I. Johnny, he was clueless, and so was I.
Mm-hmm.
And we would fight, and he would have no idea why. It was like, I don't understand why I can show up the exact same way last week and this week, and it doesn't work the same for you. And I'm like, that's because I'm a different person this week, basically.
Yeah.
It's like, that's
Totally.
what it feels like. So I think tracking your cycle, understanding if there are any like reoccurring things, and just pay attention to that, and then adjust accordingly. So if you're like, oh, I noticed, that's really interesting. Day 12 to 14, I'm feeling really great. It's like estrogen's high. You get ovulation, and it's like feeling okay after that. And then all of a sudden, boom, like I noticed that and it's always like on these, it's like, okay, well, maybe that's a time when you plan ahead. You have the massage scheduled during that time. Say, honey, like I'd like you to pick up the kids from school this day, or maybe he will offer if you're both communicating well. And like you kind of know that this trend is coming. So then it's like, maybe we could actually look forward to it. So many women dread the luteal phase because it sucks if you're trying to operate the same way you have been, with the same workload, with the same expectation, with the same management, with the same everything. It gets much harder typically to do that in the luteal phase. We can, but at what cost? What do we do to our hormones?
And it's almost like you found with trying to do the same workouts and wondering why do I suck? That can be useful information, whether someone is exercising, whether they're at work going, why does this feel so much harder today? Just putting some awareness, you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And guess what? Things are going to be fine in X amount of days. And I'll just adapt to the circumstances.
Exactly. So it's like those really subtle changes, a little bit of awareness just goes a long way.
What prompted you to go back to fighting?
After I had retired, I was gone for about 4 years, and I met Johnny, and we had 2 kids, and the pandemic hit. And I think that was a time of self-reflection for a lot of us, right? We were kind of stuck indoors. There was less things going on. It's just like, okay, I started asking myself, like, what do I want out of life? And I kind of quickly came to the realization that I wasn't done with fighting. I had fallen out of love with fighting. I had a bitter taste in my mouth for fighting, but not so much because of fighting, but because I lacked the ability to show up in the ways that were good and healthy for me. And now that I was in a different position with a supportive partner and 2 kids.
So basically, once you got out of that relationship, that started to fix a lot of things.
Yeah.
And you found someone who...
Well, removing the toxicity helps.
That helps remove the poison. That does help.
That helps. But I also had to do a lot of soul searching. After I retired, I basically packed my car and I just started driving.
Interesting.
I was in Las Vegas. I just literally got in the car with my little dog and I headed towards the coast. And then I drove up the coastline. And for the first time in my life, I really just tried to see what came to me, like what spoke to me, and what did I want? What did I want at that moment? What choice did I want to make? And I just allowed myself to be a very free person. I had been so diligent and regimented and tried to be as perfect as I could be with every single meal I had eaten, down to every single, 2, 3, 4 workouts a day. I've just been so locked down for so many years of my life, basically all of my 20s, that I didn't know how to just be a free bird. And so when I retired after that fight, I remember hitting a very dark moment where I was on just like contemplating taking my own life.
Oh, geez.
Because I thought I was a loser. It was the first time I'd lost 2 fights in a row. I didn't have any value in myself other than being a fighter, or very, very little. And I remember in that moment really thinking about it. Is my life still worth living? Or should I just end it now? And there was like a pinhole of light in the room. And to me, that was my spirituality. That was the only thing in that moment that I had. I didn't have a person around me. I didn't have anyone that I felt like would understand exactly what I was going through, except for God. And so I said a prayer, and that was my saving grace, honestly. Wow. So I didn't know what to do, but I knew it wasn't working. So I had half of the answer. I was like, well, this isn't working, so I don't know what will, but I'm going to stop doing this because, right, the definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome.
Yeah.
So I just did something totally different, and it basically started my healing journey. I started guiding, and then I met people and I talked with experts and I read books and there's so much more to it, but I basically realized like I was very good at disassociating anything that came from my childhood. My parents fought a lot. And I love my parents. It's never a bash session on them. I don't really believe in that because I know that my parents did the best that they could with the skills and the tools that they had. But, I read 3 of Dr. Gabor Maté's books. Mm-hmm. And it was life-changing for me. I was like, oh, wow, this is what trauma can do. And he's the one that says, 80% gave the statistics, 80% of autoimmune diseases exist in women. When we operate against ourselves, the body, autoimmune is like just the body fighting the body not distinguishing self from self. Like, it's like, oh, this is foreign, but it's you. Well, like, isn't that kind of what we do when we force ourselves to live in a stressful environment? It's like our body's saying no. We want to say no, but we override it and we fight ourselves. And so is that possible that we manifest that deep down into our body, our cellular level, where it's like some parts of us are saying yes, some parts are saying no. And so all of a sudden there's a fight. We know that stress is not good for autoimmune disease. We know that. Yeah. It can trigger MS. It can flare things. You get a stressful event. You get your eczema pops up. It's very clear that stress is not good for that. So I basically did the opposite. And by the way, I used to have eczema. I used to have it like pretty chronically during that time in my life. I would have it like on my wrist and the top of my hand. I have not had it since then. Isn't that wild?
That is wild.
Yeah. For years I had it. And I was just...
So on this, so you pack your car with your dog and you just start to figure things out and then your life changes.
Yeah. One onion layer at a time. It was a lot of layers.
Peeling it back.
I mean, if we're really, simplifying it in a broad stroke, that was the start of it. It was, and reconnecting with family. Yeah. I think that was really big. I had isolated myself a lot I hadn't talked to my mom in years and I barely talked to my dad. And there's just so much family that I had not nourished or reconnected, a lot of relationships. So I started doing that, calling people, texting people on my way.
Nice.
And then I would randomly end up, meeting with people along the way and be like, oh, I haven't talked to this person in forever. Like, oh, great. Well, I'm going through here. I'm going through there. Like, let's meet up. And cool. It was really cool. It was very healing.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so then what was the decision to go back to fighting?
Then, as we got to the pandemic part, right, I really started to break down why I had stopped fighting and revisit the idea of, fighting because I asked myself, what do I want? We're in this forced slowdown. Where am I going? I'm living in Singapore, by the way, right now. And I'm like 8.5 months pregnant with my son. So it was just a moment of deep self-reflection and really deciding and trying to figure out what my next direction was. And I just knew I wanted to fight. I knew I wanted to do it again. And not because I wanted to just come back and win and all the things. It was because I wanted an opportunity to do it the right way for once. I had done it the hardest way possible and I'd still managed to become a world champion. And I wanted to know what it would feel like if I could do it with synergy and work with myself. And I wanted to really shake the hand of the woman who is the best version of me. And I got to do that.
That's cool.
I got to do that. So that was the feather in my cap. And that's what makes me feel like there's nothing I'm missing. I've turned over every stone in this sport. I've worked through the most, the deepest adversities in my life. And I've unpacked things and I've done what I set out to do. And that was bigger for me than winning a world championship.
What does that tell you about finding your limits?
I think it tells me that we're limitless. I don't even think I found my limit, to be honest.
Yeah.
But time will change the ways that you want to approach the pursuit of your limits. And when you fulfill certain buckets in your life, it feels really good to move on to the other ones. There's so many opportunities and so many directions that life can take us, but it's Not until I think that we sometimes find the buckets that don't work for us through failure and success. And then we fill the buckets that are meaningful in our life. And then we're like, okay, that's good. That one's full. I can move on. I want to pursue this other bucket. And I think for me, I left the sport with a bucket half full.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew I wanted to come back and I wanted to figure it out. And I wanted to feel what it felt like to work not in spite of anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What do you feel like the message is for women in particular? I feel like you're an interesting case because in high school, you're like, I'm doing that thing where it's only dudes.
Yeah.
And you follow this career path that is somewhat untraditional and learned a lot along the way. It's like, kind of what's the message you would give?
Oh, I would honestly just say, maybe this sounds cliche, but I really mean it, is like, do the hard things, take the risk,
mm-hmm.
because you are going to assume more failures, but it's all for the greater good. It's all for finding out what you're really made of. And that is the best feeling. That is the win.
Yeah.
You know, I think winning for me has changed definitions so many times throughout my life and my career. Everything from, wrestling to fighting to winning in life. And I realized the biggest wins in life are when you can show up and conquer and move through. And it's not the trying to avoid the hard thing. It is knowing that you can do the hard thing, knowing that you can get through the hard thing. That is my goal. That's my goal for my kids. That's my goal for me, is to never feel like I can't do something hard. If I put my mind to it, I can do whatever the challenge is, or I can get through whatever the challenge is, whether I planned for it or I didn't. We can't plan for all of them.
Yeah.
But I know that I have the ability to do hard things, and it's one of the best wins in life.
I love it. Amazing. Final question. Do you keep up with UFC and upcoming fights?
I do somewhat. I'm not I'm not a guru. There's a lot of people who do a way better job than I do, but I try to.
Is there a fight in particular for the Freedom 250 that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, Justin Gaethje's fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Justin Gaethje. I think that he's such a cool person and he's such a warrior. I mean, he just encapsulates, I think, what it means to be a warrior, really down-to-earth person. So, I mean, it helps when I like the person as well.
Yeah.
He's a good buddy of Johnny's. He's a friend of mine as well. He's a super good guy. And he's a savage. He's a warrior. So I'm very looking forward to that fight.
I love it. Well, Miesha, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Thanks for checking out the show, and thanks to Miesha for coming in the studio. Our producer, Robbie, would especially like to thank Miesha because I tried as hard as I could to get her to choke him out on camera. She wouldn't do it. Robbie's thankful. As always, we are in your feeds twice a week, so please keep an eye out for more. If you want to send us questions for our Ask Michael Anything section, please send them to media@twopct.com. Drop them in the comments. We'll try and answer as many as we can. Don't forget to subscribe so you can get updated on all our new episodes coming out soon. As always, have fun. Don't die.